liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America. There is not a black America and a white America and Latino America and Asian America. There's the United States of America. Change happens because the American people demand it, because they rise up and insist on new ideas and new leadership, a new politics for a new time. America, this is one of those moments. Now, I won't pretend the path I'm offering is quick or easy. I never have. You didn't elect me to tell you what you wanted to hear. You elected me to tell you the truth. What we heard was a deeply pessimistic vision of a country where we turn against each other and turn away from the rest of the world. And that is not the America I know. The America I know is full of courage and optimism and ingenuity. The America I know is decent and generous. This president and those in power, those who benefit from keeping things the way they are counting on your cynicism. They know they can't win you over with their policies. Do not let them take away your power. Do not let them take away your democracy.
Anticipation is already building for what is expected to be yet another moment from that president, former president. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama is also speaking tonight. They both take center stage tonight in front of their hometown crowd of Chicago, Illinois. It will also be a full circle moment for the vice president, getting a huge show of support from the man she spent time knocking on doors for back in Iowa in 2008. A few years ago, she shared this photo of her from just before the Iowa caucuses that year. Now, the former president will return the favor, asking Americans to help elect Vice President Harris and help her make her own history. Joining our conversation, former Obama senior advisor, co-host of Pod Save America, Dan Pfeiffer joins us. Claire and the Rev are still here. Dan, I went back and watched that 2020 convention speech, which I think shook me when I heard it, because he did not flinch or shy away from sort of the horrors of that political moment, of what the Trump years had wrought. This is a different moment, but the same risk. And I wonder what, I don't even know how you guys field questions about what should we expect, because all those speeches are so, you sort of stack them on top of each other, and they encapsulate the moment in which we were all sort of operating. But tell me what you think went into the president's crafting of his speech tonight.
Well, I think he has a couple of tasks. One, he does have to remind people, as he did in 2020, of the dangers of Donald Trump, what that means for real people. And the way he's handled Trump in the past is he, instead of sort of fear-mongering about him, he cuts Trump down to size with humor. Right, because we don't want him to pretend to be a strong man. He's a clown. He's a failure. He's a loser. And to do that in a very good-natured, humorous Obama way. But his real main task tonight is that Kamala Harris has been his friend for 20 years. They met when he was running for Senate in 2004 at a fundraiser. As Senator McCaskill knows, as someone who was on the Obama campaign very early, there weren't a lot of elected officials who endorsed him in the beginning. She was there. She was someone who did anything the campaign asked. She knocked doors in sub-zero temperatures in Iowa. And so he can testify to, as someone who's worked with her, as someone who knows her, and help do what I think is the central task of this convention, which is to introduce Kamala Harris, her story, her vision, and her values to the American people.
What do you think, and what do you say privately when you hear people compare this political moment to any of the moments of the Obama era?
I mean, obviously a lot has happened since 2008, right? Watching those convention speeches is sort of a way of seeing how America's changed from his message in 2004 to what you showed from 2020. I'm here back in Chicago. I also feel like I'm watching my life through those speeches. But I think so it's not the same. But there are elements that feel similar, right? Like Barack Obama, Kamala Harris is trying to build a movement that's not about her, it's about the people. like President Obama, she understands that no matter what the polls say, she's an underdog, and she is running with the sort of fearlessness that Obama brought to his campaigns, right? Willing to take risks, willing to take things on, being courageous, not cautious in your decision making. And I think the most important thing is that when you're building a political movement, and this is something Obama did, and it's something you see every day from Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, is you want your movement to be fun and joyous, to be a party that people want to come to want to show up at your rallies. And I see that every day in her campaign. And so it's a different moment, but if you were there for the Obama years, particularly in 2008, you see things that are very, very similar and make me feel very good about the kind of campaign she's running.
So obviously I was on the McCain 08 campaign, but I lived in New York, and I would come home for a weekend, and all my friends' kids had on Hope and Change onesies. And I was like, oh, we're so screwed. I mean, everyone's kid is where, this has that feeling where there is a gravitational pull to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz's message. The other side of that is sort of the more boring and mundane work, and we're going to talk to Dan Kinanen again, but the ground game. What is your assessment of the state of the race in the battleground states?
I think it's incredibly close, right? In a very short period of time, Kamala Harris has reopened the map. Right now, she is now competitive in all 6, and I would actually say 7 battleground states, because I think she has made North Carolina competitive. So she has multiple paths to get there, but she has work to do. Right? If the election were held today, I don't know who would win, but she has the momentum. And so what's so important about Dan Kinanen and the people on the Harris campaign is you can build all the field operations in the world, but you can't manufacture enthusiasm. Now she has enthusiasm, and that operation that they have put together can capture that enthusiasm as Obama's did and turn it into a strong GOTV organizing campaign. But so things are looking great, but there's a lot of work to do, because this is going to be a very, very close race.
It's such a good point. You can't build a ground game with unpaid volunteers and momentum without the enthusiasm. But the enthusiasm without that brilliant ground game doesn't get you the margins that you need in the states that you need. You said you sort of see your own life playing out through those speeches and these moments. It feels like everyone in the room has this shared experience, and some of the emotion that I felt in the nearly 4-minute standing ovation for President Obama was everything that we've been through as a country. If you're on the pro-democracy side, you've felt all that too. I wonder what you make of their ability to sort of project that energy in the room out into living rooms, and how they sustain that through the week.
Well, I think that they're doing a great job so far. It is really about, there's a strategic task here, as I said, to introduce her to the country, to raise the stakes in the election, remind people about Trump and Project 2025 and all of that. But there is so much enthusiasm, so much joy, so much excitement, and you feel it sort of building. I noticed it the second I landed in Chicago on Sunday night, and they're doing a great job of doing it. And it is there's a progression here. There was the great speeches from Secretary Clinton and President Biden last night. President Biden had his moment. He officially passed the torch to Kamala Harris. You have the Obamas tonight. You have Tim Walz tomorrow night. We've had an array of some of the rising stars in our party speaking throughout the night. And I will say, just sitting here, I feel better about the state of the Democratic Party than I have at any point in recent memory, because it really does feel like we have this huge bench. We're unified. We're moving forward. It doesn't mean the election is easy. It doesn't mean that we're necessarily automatically going to win or as a landslide. But the party itself feels ready for the moment in a way. And I think there's something Kamala Harris gets credit for is, since the moment Trump came down that escalator, all of our politics has been about Trump. Stopping him, talking about fears of him. She is doing something different. Her politics are not about Trump. They're about her. They're about hope, future. It's about doing something as opposed to stopping Trump from doing something bad. And so continuing to build on that this week, I think is great. I feel like there's a real chance they're going to come out of here with a ton of momentum, with some great campaigning going forward. And so, we're one day in here, but very successful convention so far, I think.